My fellow writer over at Pucks and Pitchforks, Dan Rice, accompanies me on today's episode of Locked On Devils. We're going to preview Game 3 and figure out where the New Jersey Devils go from here. They are down, but are they out? There's a lot to discuss with Dan. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
All righty now. What is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. I'm joined alongside my fellow colleague at Pucks and Pitchforks, and also my fellow credentialed media member. It is Dan Rice. He's a friend of the show, but it's been a while. So, Dan, how you been holding up?
I've been well. It's been an exciting end to the season. Devils set a lot of records, right? The huge chase for 100 points and all that. And we get playoff hockey for the first time since 2018, which after everything that's happened the last, handful of years here with COVID and everything going on in the world, feels like a really, really long time ago, longer than it was. But it was fun, albeit, the result wasn't what we expected. It was a fun couple of days this week over at Prudential Center.
Yeah, and you talk about like the COVID situation and how it's been a while. So when Patrick Kane scored in Game 2, that was his first playoff goal since the Edmonton bubble almost 3 years ago. So we're talking about late summer of 2020. So, and it just feels like it happened like a year or two ago, but it's almost 3 years since Patrick Kane has scored in the playoffs. So definitely sort of a deja vu kind of moment. And, the New Jersey Devils being back in the playoffs for the first time since Taylor Hall led the way. And we were expecting for a different outcome because the last time the Devils appeared in the playoffs, unfortunately, they were dealt in 5 games by the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was a concern that I had going into the playoffs, which is there's a difference between being a regular season team and there's also a difference between being a playoff team. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of good teams out east. So you got the Boston Bruins, you got the Carolina Hurricanes, obviously you got the Devils, you got the Rangers, all plus 100 points at the conclusion of the regular season. So it was bound that one of those teams were going to be knocked out in the first round. And right now it's looking like it's the Devils. But before we get into the details of it, I want to hear your thoughts. So like, what have you been seeing from the Devils up in the press box during these last couple of games?
First off, the first game, I thought they looked tentative. They looked a little shaky. Going in, I didn't think that was going to be there. I just kind of assumed maybe that the talent would just kind of take over. But we all kind of know playoffs is a different animal. And they did the Rangers did a really good job at bottling them up. They're very responsible defensively. Maybe more credit than I or a lot of other people kind of give them credit for. They play really well as a unit, and they obviously stuck to their game plan to come in on the road and win 2 games. It's not easy in this league, but they do have that experience going for them, right? They have a lot of guys that have kind of been through this before. Most of their core group has kind of been in these situations, and they start on the road where all the pressure is kind of really on the Devils, right? Like they obviously didn't finish too far ahead of the Rangers, but they've been ahead of them for the majority of the season. So a lot of people were expecting that the Devils would kind of come out, and I think I did too, kind of guns blazing, and they kind of fell behind, and the power play of the Rangers kind of took over. Both games, really, especially the first game, though, I thought it really changed the dynamic because the Devils get an early power play, they kind of come up empty, and then the Rangers score, I think it was 16 seconds on their first power play. So that's just kind of like a punch in the nads, really, like and kind of almost a reality check for the Devils players who, again, a lot of them haven't kind of been through these situations. They have a lot of veteran experience on their team, right? Guys like Palat, Tatar, and Hamilton. They've played on teams that have gone on playoff runs, but collectively as a group, this group of 23, 25 guys, they haven't gone through this together as a unit. So there's little learning curves and experiences. And, one of the moves that Coach Ruff made after the first game was scratching Siegenthaler last night. A lot of people kind of scratching their head. Some of the reasoning was to get Brendan Smith in, a more physical, more experienced kind of defender. But I thought Siegenthaler was a little shaky in it. And if I'm not mistaken, on that first goal in game one, he maybe tried to do a little too much, didn't get the puck out of the zone. He was kind of fighting with it along the wall. I think there was another Ranger player there too. And errant pass ends up in Tarasenko's stick. And 9 times out of 10, that guy's going to make you pay. And he did. And he did it again last night in game 2. Tarasenko again scores the opening goal for the Rangers. The difference there is game 1, it was giving the Rangers a lead, whereas last night it tied the game. But yeah, just that first game, they just looked really slow. Another thing I talked about a lot with people before last night's game was the first game, the Devils, we're used to seeing them put up 40, 45, 50 shots this season per game sometimes. They had 15 through 2 periods, and I think they finished with 23 or 24 that first game. Like sometimes that's a period and a half total. 15 through 2 periods, that's sometimes a 1 period total for them. And so they just weren't getting the shots. They were maybe looking to find that perfect pass, make that perfect play. And a lot of times you just have to kind of dumb it down. And some of the players were saying that even after last night's game, like we have to start making it more simple for ourselves, because we're not having that sustained offensive zone time, because we're dancing around and we're trying to find this guy and make this play. Just start putting the pucks towards the net, and it'll hit a body, it'll hit a skate. You might get a rebound, you might get a funny bounce, and that's kind of how playoff games the momentum can turn. And unfortunately for the Devils, they weren't able to find any of that momentum in either of the 2 games.
Yeah, so according to Todd Cordell, Siegenthaler led the Devils defenseman with a 66.92 expected goals for percentage in game 1, and was not on any of the New York's power play goals. So, and yet he was still a healthy scratch. So I get your reasoning, but I still think that there could have been a different avenue that Lindy Ruff would have taken. And I think what triggered a lot of the Devils fan base was that that Lindy Ruff wanted more quote unquote physicality, as confirmed in his post-game press conference. However, I personally don't feel as though physicality was the issue in game 1. In game 1, in my eyes, the issue was that the Devils just got outworked in special teams. So you saw Chris Kreider. He was able to net a couple power play goals. The Devils, they weren't able to get a single shot on their 4 power play opportunities, which is unacceptable. And I thought the execution in game 2 got a little bit better, because obviously Eric Holla, your boy, the Golden Gopher from the University of Minnesota. There we go. That's why I had to say it. But anyway, Eric Holla scores on the power play. And what I saw previously was that I saw the Devils get their first shot on Shesterkin during the power play, and it just seemed like their confidence went up just a little bit more. And as a result, Eric Holla out in front of the net, able to score. So that's where I kind of stood with the lineup decisions. And given how, I don't know if you were at the practice this morning, but given how like Lindy Ruff has been forming the lines during the course of the practice on Friday morning, it does leave me a little concerned, just a little bit, because it's just like, what are we doing here? So before we talk about that, obviously we talked about some of the teams that had 100+ points. So I mentioned the Bruins, I mentioned the Hurricanes, obviously the Devils. I forgot to mention the Maple Leafs, so don't worry, Maple Leafs fans, I didn't forget you. Rangers, obviously, Lightning were just 2 points away from 100. Out of all, I don't mean to make you feel bad or anything, but out of all the Devils writers I've interviewed, you are the longest tenured one. So I've talked to Amanda Stein, Christy Flannery, Ryan Novozinski, James Nichols, well, maybe Alan Kreda, but Alan Kreda covers like all three of the teams. Like he covers the Devils. Yeah, he covers the Rangers, Islanders, and also the Devils. But in terms of just being the sole Devils writer, you are the longest tenured media personnel that I've spoken with. So I want to get your thoughts. How does this team stack up to some of those championship caliber teams that you saw early on, kind of thing? Because the thing is, the Devils broke the franchise record for most wins in a single season. Jack Hughes was able to pass Patrick Elias for most points in a single season by a Devils player. Dougie Hamilton, he was able to tie the franchise record for most goals in a single season by a defenseman set by Barry Beck in the late 70s. And I could go on for hours, but basically the name of the game was that the Devils, they were doing something that hadn't been accomplished since like the early 2000s. How does this team compare to some of those championship caliber teams? Like, what's missing in your eyes?
Experience is one. Like, those teams had a lot of guys that had been through the wars, so to speak, right? You still had Stevens and Niedermeyer. In the early part of the 2000s, you still had Danico around. Up front, you had Patrick Elias. He was obviously a Devils lifer. Before Gomez left, they had him. Rafalski was another big piece of that puzzle. John Madden. All those guys, they came up as rookies within the team, but they developed really quickly. We saw a lot of that this season. As far as regular seasons go, this team this season was pretty unmatched as teams that I've covered. The only one that maybe comes to mind is, and I might get the season wrong, but I'm sure somebody will correct me. I think it was around the 06-07 season when they went on a 8-game winning streak to end the season, to win the division on the last day. I think even in the last game, they were down to Montreal and they rallied to score like 3 goals in 5 minutes or something crazy. That team was a team that we thought was really going to go places. And again, I might be mixing my years up, but I think they get to the second round and they end up losing to a somewhat inferior team in my estimation. But, you know, playoffs is a different animal. A lot of times the Devils have had success in the playoffs in their previous history, franchise history. They just get the right matchups. The year they win the first year they win the cup, like, they didn't have to go through the Rangers in 95. Same thing in 2000. Both times they go through the Flyers. The Flyers were a team that the Devils really matched up well with, and the Rangers really weren't. And another point is, like, I've kind of been on both sides of this Devils Rangers playoff experience where I've seen the Rangers beat the Devils in a series, and I've seen the Devils beat the Rangers in a series. This is a little different. This Devils team is, in my estimation, they're already a success, because I told the guys when I was on the Let's Go Devils podcast right before the playoffs, like, we didn't expect them to be in this position. Contend for the playoffs, yes. I kind of figured they would be in the position that Buffalo or the Islanders were in this past season, where you go to the last week of the season and we have to win this game and need this team to lose. This Devils team this year, this was a playoff team. You know, we knew in late December, and then by the All-Star break, we kind of knew they were playing the Rangers, right? They were pretty locked into the 2-3. Now, I know they tied Carolina at one point, and then they were 1 point back, and you had all these opportunities.
Came down to the final game of the year, and unfortunately, despite the Devils being the Capitals, the Panthers were unable to beat the Hurricanes. So, unfortunately, the Devils weren't able to get the first seed in the Metro.
Right, and then that kind of changes everything. And now I think if the Devils played Florida, I think this is a different series, obviously. Like, I don't think Florida has – and then you have I'm sure the players are affected by the hype too. Like, everybody's talking about it. As a media member, like, when and this might sound bad, but, like, let hear me out here. Like, when I first heard it's locked in to play in the Rangers, I kind of rolled my eyes, because I know everything that comes with that. It's all the news stations, all the local broadcasters, whether it's SNY, the local Channel 4 news, the local Channel 2 news, basically all the people that don't come to games during the season, they all show up for this, because it's Devils Rangers. It's two local teams. For 2 weeks, hopefully, the hockey world in New York is kind of focused on this, and the New Jersey area. But a lot of those media companies are coming over from New York to cover this game. So the press box is a little bit more packed. You see, the Hockey News send in multiple writers, and NHL.com is sending multiple writers. The Athletic, all types of outlets have all types of people there. And if it was Devils Florida, it would be a completely different story. Like, there would still be a little extra media coverage, but it wouldn't be to this level. So I think all that kind of factors into it. And I heard Kenny Danico say, oh, News 12 was here. Like, I don't think the last time they were here was probably 2018 when we were in the playoffs, against Tampa. And they're all doing these live hits outside at the Marty Brodeur statue and everything. So, and it's good for the team. It's good they've had a lot of down seasons. It's good to get that kind of publicity, remind people that they are a team here, a professional team. They had and Devils fans don't need to be reminded, they had a lot of really tough seasons the last 4 or 5 years. And this is the culmination. But like I said, I think they exceeded expectations, even if it would be very disappointing if they lose 4 or 5 games, right? But I still think they're one step ahead of where we expected them to be this year. And I look at the future of, 2, 3, 4 years from now, what kind of player is Jack Hughes going to be? What kind of player is Nico going to be? What kind of player is Luke Hughes going to be, right? All these guys that are Dawson Mercer, another one, all these younger guys that are going to, instead of being 21, 22, 23, they're going to be 25, 26, 27 maybe. And they're going to have that sour taste probably of playoff experience. But I'm sure it's going to sting to have a season like that and possibly not advance past the first round. But at the end of the day, I think this is a team that's going to be a team to be reckoned with for a number of seasons. For people that like comparing things and eras, I look at it more like the the most recent Pittsburgh team where they started off with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Fleury, and they kind of added these pieces around them as the years go on. And I think we're going to see the same thing here. I think the Devils will be successful for the next 10, 15 years, possibly, as long as they continue to retool and keep up with the times. They seem like they found a great goaltender in Vanacek. That's another big piece of the puzzle. They didn't have goaltending last year, right? We talked about 7 different goaltenders last year, and this year they only had 3 or 4. So big difference. Big picture, the future is bright, but in the immediate kind of window, it's shrinking substantially. But if they win the next game, I think we could have a fairly lengthy series. I think everything kind of hinges on this next game now.
Yeah, so I said in my previous episode, but I'm sure you saw it when the stats are sent to the media personnel, but it's just like the Devils all time when trailing a series 0-2, they are 1-7. However, if you want to get specific, they are 1-2 when they drop the first 2 games of a playoff series at home. They're 1-2. So that one playoff series win, when they go 0-2, they drop the first 2 games at home. I don't know the year, but still, just to give some hope.
I think it was 95 against Boston or 94 against Boston. It's around that time period. They lost the first 2, and then they went to Boston and they won the next 2. And sometimes that's how it works in the playoffs. I remember the year Carolina won the Cup. They went to Montreal as one of the top seeds, and they lost the first 2 games. And then they go home or they come home and they lose. They win the first 2 in Montreal, then they come home and they lose 2 at home. And so this series work out like that sometimes. But again, game 3 is huge pivotal. The one thing I want to see, and just, I know we touched on it a little bit before, the power play, the first game, no shots, right? I'd like to see, and you've watched enough games, the strategy is skate to like the red line, throw it back to Jack, and let him do everything and carry the puck into the zone, and everybody kind of plays off that. Yeah, the Rangers are smart.
Unfortunately, it's not working because they're not giving Jack or any of them any lanes to run. They're getting them at neutral zone, which is why in game 2 you saw a lot of icing calls, especially in the third.
Right. And so Jack has got to, maybe I'd like to see in the next game, I'd like to see him maybe just kind of chip those pucks into the corner. Once he gets to the blue line, the Rangers are standing up there. They're waiting. They've seen the tape. We've watched them enough too. We know what's coming, and they do too. And maybe he needs to kind of start chipping a couple into the corners. Let your teammates outrace somebody. You have 5 guys on the ice. They have 4. You have to play that to your advantage to. And Brad said it after the game, we have to find ways to be a little bit more creative in the zone, but we have to make sure we get shots on the net. And then you can start to get a little bit more creative because you create rebounds, you create guys turning in different directions, and you get funny bounces. And sometimes that leads to better opportunities than for sure they've had.
There's still more in store with Dan Rice of Pucks and Pitchforks. But before we continue, I want to tell you about a product that I use literally every day. So I started taking AG1 because I wanted to be happier. I wanted to be healthier. My body is a temple, and I got to start treating it as such. So what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all those things. So its lifestyle is friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. Contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. It's one thing that's best about Athletic Greens, that uses best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testing. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out after your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And now, I know ticket prices can be a little outrageous, so here to help is Game Time. So obviously, The Rock has been bumping the last couple of days due to the playoffs, but maybe you want to head over to Madison Square Garden and watch the Devils take on the New York Rangers, hopefully to climb out of this 2-0 hole. So Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, hockey, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute ticket deals, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Let's finish off our conversation with Dan Rice of Pucks and Pitchforks. Take it away once again. So I gotta ask you, like, where do the Devils go from here? Because just to read the lineup combination, you got Palat, Heischer, and Bratt. This was for practice. Hala, Hughes, and Tatar. Meyer, McLeod, Mercer. Sharon Govich, Wood or Lazar or Bokus or Bastion. Then for defense, you got Siegenthaler and Hamilton, Graves and Marino, Smith and Severson, Hughes and Ball. Then Vanchek and Schmid are still your starting and backup goalie. But I gotta hear your thoughts. So where do the Devils go from here? Is there any hope? Like, we talked about the all-time record, we talked about what they need to work on, and this lineup combination that Lindy Ruff was rolling with in practice, quite honestly, has me a little concerned, because I know you got to shake things up, but I don't think that's what the Devils discourse had in mind. So I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I look at it kind of both sides of it. Like, they have 2 goals in 2 games, right? One is a penalty shot and the other is on a power play. So at even strength, they haven't done anything. So I kind of understand the changing of the lines. And the other part of that is, and I just finished my recap for Pucks and Pitchforks, the Tatar, Heischer, Mercer line, which had been their best line and maybe most consistently kept together trio. They had 0 shots last night. The 3 of them combined for 0 shots. Like, that's, and they had, and that's saying, like, and the Rangers didn't have the last change, right? So the Rangers are just kind of, they're not able to get the defensive players they wanted out against them. So, but the other side of me looks at it like, you changed everything, and this feels like a big panic move. But sometimes that's what happens when you're down 0-2 in a series. Like, it gets away from you pretty quick. And if they lose tomorrow, it could be, next time I'm at Prudential Center, it could be for a locker clean out day. I'm hoping I get at least 1 more game. But going into tomorrow, like, you have to you have to try different things. You have to try something to create more offense. The shot on goal total we talked about, or I mentioned earlier, like that has to rise up. And maybe a little pressure is on the Rangers now, right? They're the home team. Everybody's kind of expecting them to show up and kind of finish things off. And interesting quote last night from Jesper Bratt said, I think it was Mike Morial from NHL.com who asked, what gives you confidence that your team could come back from this now? And he says, well, we started the season 0-2, right? And after that, we went 18-1-1. So we believe we can make this a series. We believe that we can turn things around. We know we have the capability in this locker room to do it. It's just a matter of believing in one another, and staying out of the penalty box is a big part of that too. But just they have to just give a little bit more, and their backs are really against the wall. Like one of the things I wrote, this isn't a must-win game, but it's about as close to a must-win game as you get, because
your chances to go back down 3-0 are pretty much zero.
Right, and you never want to count anybody out. I think maybe even Timo Meier was on a team that came back from an 0-3 deficit. I could be remembering that wrong. He might have been on the other side of it, but either way, like you go down 0-3, like that's a really tall task. You go down 2-1, all right, you win the next game, then it's just the best out of 3, right? And now you have all the momentum going back home. There's going to be a couple of days off between game 4 and a potential game 5. There'll be that extra day, I think extra 2 days of rest, because we go Monday, Thursday. So everything could change if they play really well tomorrow night, right? Tomorrow, Saturday, and they win that game. Changes the perspective of everything. But whether we see complete line chaos and complete line blender, it's a definite possibility. I still wonder about not putting Timo with either Jack or Nico.
Yeah, Nico actually performed really well together.
Right, but I also like the idea of kind of splitting them up, where if the last change, right, the Rangers can put their best defense up, Fox and whoever, against Jack. If Jack just had a shift and they couldn't get out there, then they could put them out against Nico. But then Meier might come and get you on the other line. You can't defend everybody at the same time with your best players. So I think that's part of the reasoning too. I'd kind of like to see Luke Hughes get a game at this point. I feel like one way or another he's going to play either tomorrow or Monday night. It feels like it won't be the next game, but we'll see. Anything could change, and hopefully he gets at least one game of experience. But we'll see how they end up playing it out.
Yep, in the words of Eric Holla, according to Amanda Stein, we're not done. We're far from done. I think that's the biggest message. We're not defeated. We're going to keep passing, and we're going to get better, or we're going to keep pressing, and we're going to get better. It's far from over, all the above. So that's why we have someone like Eric Holla on the team, just having that veteran leadership, people who might have been in these situations before. So hopefully the New Jersey Devils can turn it around. And yes, you got to treat it as a must win. And I always say, like, people doubted the Devils going into the year. They doubted them at the beginning of the year. They doubted them in January. They were questioning Jack Hughes' health. They were questioning Dougie Hamilton's health. So they were questioning if Lindy Ruff was suitable to be the head coach. And I personally think he still is. So, why doubt the Devils at this point now? I think people should learn their lesson. Like, don't doubt the Devils, and it's not over until the final buzzer sounds, 000s have hit the board, and it says Rangers advancing to the next round. So it's not over until you get that final moment. So either way, I think the Devils, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. You got to go into enemy territory, but whatever the case might be, I'm excited for it, and I hope to see you again real soon, Dan, because my semester is winding down.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, they have to go, they have to just kind of leave it all out there tomorrow night and play with a little reckless abandon, but play smart, short shifts. Like I kind of said, chip the puck in, win a wall battle, win one of those 50-50 battles, kind of create some chaos. They definitely have to get more traffic in front of the goalie. That was another thing that Bratt mentioned last night. He said, we're not getting enough traffic. We're giving him easy shots to stop. We have to put bodies in front of him, take some more sharp angled shots. and they've been a great road team all season. So Devils fans should be confident in them, despite what just happened in the last two games. This team, just look back to a week ago, the last game of the regular season, right? They were losing 3-0 and 4-1, and they came back and they won that game against, albeit a little decrepit Washington Capitals team, but they still were able to pull that off on the road in an important game, a game that it didn't have like a life or death playoff meaning, but that game had some meaning to them, and it was great to see that kind of come back. And I think I'm pretty confident we'll see a better effort tomorrow night.
Okay, so if people want reference, the Devils at home, they are 24-13-4. On the road, they are 28-9-4. So they are definitely a better road team. Obviously, like a month or two ago, that number was way more jarring because the Devils were losing a lot at home. But anyway, Dan, I want to thank you for taking the time to share some great insight, share your perspective, and basically shine some light for my audience as to what can be expected these next couple of games for New Jersey Devils. Where can my audience find you?
Yeah, thanks first of all for having me on again. It was great to see you during the season as well. Look forward to seeing you again, hopefully in the upcoming season. People can find me on Twitter at @dricehockey or Dr. Ice Hockey, however you want to kind of interpret it. Everybody has their own interpretation of it. And you can find my work at Pucks and Pitchforks. If you're into women's hockey, I know you've covered that a little bit here with our friend Soraya Tinker. You can find my work on women's hockey over at the Ice Garden. I do kind of a bunch of different stuff for them lately. Did a podcast before. I've been doing Twitter Spaces. We went independent, so we're sorting all that kind of stuff out. The podcast will be back up and running soon. But yeah, thanks again for having me on. You do a great job. It's great to see you in person, as I said, and I look forward to crossing paths with you down the road for sure.
Thank you, my friend. And depending on how this series goes, maybe you might see me in a playoff series, or maybe you'll see me for the exit meeting interviews. We will see. But either way, our paths will cross once again. But you just heard from Dan Rice and basically providing some insight. I'm sorry, you had something to say?
Yeah, and if you're going to be in the area in the summertime, development camp will be over in Newark right around 4th of July, right after the draft, like a week or two after the draft. All the draft picks come in, all the prospects that have been at college and play with their junior teams. That's always a great opportunity to do interviews and kind of get to know these kids before they become real deal NHL players. I did a lot of great interviews over the years at those things. I feel like I've talked to Blake Coleman like 7 times at those things over the years. And then, you saw the progression and development of him, and he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion now, right? Albeit, unfortunately, not with the Devils, but
he still he still considers New Jersey his home. He still considers New Jersey his home.
He does, and he's a great guy, and it's as a reporter, it's great to get to know those kids, and so this way, maybe if you do cross paths with them, or they do get called up down the road, they recognize somebody that wanted to talk to them when they weren't really much anybody. So always a great opportunity if you can make it out for that. Hopefully I'll see you there too. But yeah, hopefully we have a couple more games here. I'm thinking at least one more. 3, 4 more would be great. But we'll cross those paths. We got to take care of game 3 tomorrow night first.
We'll see what happens. And like I said, in the words of Nico Hischier, why not? Let's prove them wrong. So it was never easy, and it'll continue to never be easy. But if I've learned one thing this year, don't count out the Devils under any circumstance.
Yeah, for real. They've proven it, time and time again, and they've played their best when people have doubted them. Like I mentioned, Brat mentioned, they started 0-2, right? Everybody's booing them off the ice, and then they went 18-1-1, which is ridiculous to think about. But they're certainly capable. Playoffs is a different animal, but I feel pretty good about their chances going into tomorrow night. But let's see what happens, and we'll reconnect soon.
Yep, the We Believe Devils team. Thank you so much, Dan.
Anytime, buddy. Take care.